5 Sinister Catskills Mountain Tales revealed. Spine-chilling secrets too terrifying to ignore. The Johnson family thought they had found paradise. After leaving the clutches of New York City, they traded noise for tranquility in a charming cabin nestled in the Catskills. Yet, every tranquil forest holds its secrets, and some are darker than others. It started as a quaint adventure, a retreat from the frantic urban chaos, until dread seeped into their idyllic facade. The first night arrived, and the woods stood like sentinels watching. The moon cast eerie shadows as Mark gathered the nerve to step outside. He hesitated, the heavy silence clawing at his senses. Distant owl hoots echoed like mournful cries, a reminder that the tranquility was superficial. When he stepped onto the unlit path to take out the trash, he felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him. The local sheriff emerged from the shadows, a grizzled figure with deep-set eyes that mirrored the night's darkness. "Stay inside after dark," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. The warning hung like an ominous cloud as he turned away dismissively, shaking off the chill that gnawed at him. Inside, Emily and Tommy laughed, flipping pages of a storybook, oblivious to the building tension outside. But whispers of the disappearances invaded Mark's mind. As the family ventured into town, they caught snippets of hushed conversations. Faces turned cold, smiles faded. Mark's chill deepened when he overheard men discussing what the sheriff claimed remained a mere urban legend. The laughter around him felt hollow. Was this picturesque town truly a haven, or was darkness lurking beneath its surface? Returning home, Tommy bounded toward his room, excitedly announcing he found something peculiar under his bedroom floorboards. His eyes glowed with the thrill of discovery, but Mark felt a tinge of dread inching up his spine. The hidden compartment revealed an old necklace, a dusty childish toy, and a journal filled with frantic scrawls about the pact. Shadows danced in the corners of the cabin, and unease began to poison their world. Days dragged on, marked by an unsettling sense of being stalked by an unseen predatory force. The woods whispered secrets at night, the rustling leaves sounding like voices calling from a forgotten past. One evening, horrible chanting echoed from the trees, scratching at Mark's sanity. His heart raced, cold sweat dampened his brow. He felt compelled to confront the sheriff, but Emily urged caution. An apprehensive silence hung between them, their bond trembling under the weight of doubt. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." They stepped onto the main street, but felt the dark eyes of the townsfolk upon them. Whispers slithered through the air like snakes as they approached the sheriff's office. The cabin felt stifling. The innocent relics from Tommy's room morphed into warnings, and the woods loomed menacingly close. Doubt gnawed at Mark deeper than ever, twisting his gut. What lay behind the sheriff's grizzled facade? Why did the townsfolk's smiles seem so forced? As they neared the office, they spotted the sheriff standing outside. But he wasn't alone. The entire community gathered behind him, faces illuminated by sickly grins that chilled Mark to the bone. Laughter echoed in the night air, but it was a laughter without joy, an echo of despair. He felt the door to escape begin to close. This was no simple small-town life. This was a web of horror. Frightened and entrapped, Mark realized he had stepped into a living nightmare. Were they the next to vanish? Fear spiraled within him as the shadows of the Catskills conspired against them. The crowd around the sheriff shifted, their laughter ringing out like a twisted choir. Mark's heart raced, each pulse thudding against his ribcage as if trying to break free. He glanced at Emily, who looked as pale as the moonlight filtering through the trees. Tommy, blissfully unaware, tugged at his father's shirt, eager to know what was happening. "Dad, why are we stopping?" Tommy's innocent question sliced through the mounting tension. Mark forced a smile, but dread twisted in his gut like a serpent. "Just talking to the sheriff, buddy," he managed, his voice trembling. He stepped forward, fueled by a mix of fear and urgency. "Sheriff," Mark called out, his voice cracking. The sheriff's head turned slowly, the smile fading into an expression of something darker. "Stay where you are, Mark," he said in a low growl. "You don't want to make this worse." The threat lingered in the air, thickening with the night. Unease surged within Mark. He felt every pair of eyes in that crowd boring into him, inspecting, judging. Was the sheriff protecting them? Or hiding something? Mark wanted to believe the best. But a weight settled in his chest. This wasn't the friendly small town they'd hoped for. From behind the sheriff, a woman stepped forward, her lip quivering. "Please, don't ask any more questions. Just leave it be." Her voice was barely a whisper, but her desperation echoed through the crowd, sending chills racing down Mark's spine. "Why? What are you hiding?" Mark yelled, the fear leaking into his words. The sheriff's eyes darkened, like storm clouds gathering for a downpour. "You'll find out soon enough," he said, the rumble of his voice an unmistakable warning. "These woods don't take kindly to intruders, and neither do we." A chill ran down Mark's back, and suddenly the laughter ceased. An eerie silence wrapped around them like a suffocating blanket. Mark turned to his family, his instincts screamed for them to run. But where could they go? They were surrounded. "Let us go," Mark shouted to Emily, grabbing Tommy's hand. They pushed through the throng, but the crowd parted slowly, almost deliberately, like they were allowing them to escape for now. Mark felt eyes watching their every move, calculating, measuring. Back at the cabin, the air felt heavy with anticipation. Each creak of the old wood echoed in the stillness, amplifying the dread settling in. The shadows inside loomed larger than before, each corner a void filled with secrets. Mark slammed the door behind them, locking it tight, but he knew that wouldn't hold forever. "What was that about?" Emily asked, panic lacing her tone. "I don't know," Mark replied, his voice hoarse, "but I feel trapped. Those people, something's wrong in this town." Tommy sat on the floor, fiddling absent-mindedly with the odd old necklace he had found. "Look, Dad," he shouted suddenly, holding it up. "It's glowing." Mark's blood ran cold. "What do you mean? Let me see that." He knelt, reaching for the necklace, but as he did, a sound outside jarred him. It was the chanting again, that haunting chorus clawing its way through the night, growing louder, nearer, wrapping around their cabin as if it were a living entity. "What is that?" Emily shrieked, eyes wide, terror painted across her face. It was a menacing rhythm, a call that resonated deep within the very bones of the woods. Mark clutched the necklace, its warmth pulsing in his hand. Tommy's laughter danced in stark contrast to the horror outside. But the melody was twisted now, a siren call leading straight towards catastrophe. As the chanting grew relentless, a pounding came at the door, knuckles thumping against the wood, echoing their inevitable doom. "Mom! Dad! Is someone there?" Tommy cried, voice quaking. Mark shot a glance at Emily, his heart standing still. "What do we do?" she whispered, eyes wide with fear. But before Mark could respond, the door shuddered violently, and the laughter returned maniacal, echoing, trapping them in an invisible net of terror. Then came a voice from the other side, deep and resonant. "Time us up." Mark's breath caught. They had to face the darkness or succumb to it. What lay beyond the door was unknown, but just like the force within the woods, one thing was clear. They couldn't hide forever. The pounding stopped abruptly, as if the noise had been swallowed by the very darkness surrounding them. The stillness that followed was thick, suffocating. Mark's heart thundered wildly in his chest, an unceasing rhythm that screamed for release. Sweat trickled down his forehead, causing his vision to blur for a moment before he steadied himself. "Mom," Tommy whimpered, clutching the glowing necklace like a lifeline. The light pulsed in his small hand, illuminating his innocent features twisted with fear. Mark felt heat wave over him, but there was no time to hesitate. "Stand behind me," he ordered, trying to project strength, though his own fear gnawed at him. Emily clutched Tommy tightly, her composure fraying as the shadows danced menacingly around them. The door creaked once more. With an unexpected force, it slammed against the frame, rattling the cabin. "Time's up." The voice was closer this time. A rasp like dried leaves scratching against the ground. A dark figure loomed at the threshold, backlit by the faint glow from the forest. Mark caught a glimpse of sunken eyes that gleamed with malice. The sheriff? No, this was something far worse. "Come outside," the figure commanded. A voice that echoed the chant from before, smooth and inviting, like honey laced with poison. "The woods want to see you. What do you want?" Mark shouted, raw desperation spilling over. "We haven't done anything to you." Behind the figure, Mark could see shapes moving in the darkness, figures emerging from the trees, their silhouettes monstrous and jagged, melting into the shadows like ghosts. The crowd had followed them, joining the chorus that rose in a crescendo of eerie harmonies. It was a macabre choir, singing their fate in melodic tones. "Open the door, Mark," the figure rasped, a smile creeping across its lips. "You know you want to. It's calling you." "Don't. Stay away," Emily cried, her voice trembling but fierce. But the longer they stood there, the more hypnotic the chanting became, pulling at the corners of Mark's mind, beckoning him to unlock the door and step into the night. He took a step back, fighting against that dark pull, but it was as if the cabin itself were shifting against him, the walls throbbing with that sinister rhythm. "No." He shook his head violently, anger mingling with terror. "We're not going anywhere." Mark glanced at Tommy. The boyish expression was different now, eyes glazed as he stared at the glowing necklace. "Dad." "It's pretty," Tommy said, his voice soft, almost dreamlike. The necklace pulsed brighter, reflecting off Tommy's face, casting long shadows that danced like sinister specters. "Don't look at it." "Tommy, don't," Mark shouted, lunging toward his son. But the words struggled to break through the spell that had wrapped around them all. Outside, laughter erupted again, cruel and mocking. They were playing with them like a cat with a trapped mouse, realizing they were closing in, tightening the noose of horror. Suddenly, Tommy dropped the necklace. It landed with a soft thud, the light dimming as it hit the wooden floor. In that instant, the world outside faded, the chanting lowering to an almost audible whisper. "Did you feel that?" Emily breathed. "It's fading, but not for long." The creature at the door snarled in frustration, grasping at the doorframe, clawed fingers digging into the wood. Mark's mind raced, heart pounding, threading through his panic. "Tommy, will you listen to me? We have to leave this place. Now." Mark grabbed his son's arm, pulling him back toward the deep, impenetrable shadows of their cabin, where safety might be found. Then, just as hope flickered in his chest, the door exploded inward. The laughter shattered their defenses, and the darkness surged forward, bursting through the threshold like a malevolent tide. Mark barely had a moment to realize they were losing the battle when a shrill scream rose above the chaos. Tommy. Fear tightened around Mark's throat. When he turned to face the darkness, it was no longer just a voice, it had a face. "Catch him," the shadows whispered, a promise more than a threat. In that fraction of a second, as the void swallowed his son's scream, Mark knew the real horror was about to begin. What was waiting on the other side of their last hope? The shadows swirled, hot and thick, charging into the cabin like a storm unleashed. Mark fought against the overwhelming force, straining to find Tommy, to pull him from the brink of that haunting darkness. Screams echoed in his ears, each one driving the nails of panic deeper into his heart. He stumbled forward, branches of icy blackness reaching out to claw at him, tearing at his resolve. "Mom! Dad!" Tommy's voice shrieked, piercing through the chaos. Mark's vision cleared momentarily, a fleeting glimpse of his son's silhouette ensnared in the darkness, dragged toward the door that swung wildly, almost alive, as if the cabin itself sought to eject them all into the night. The creature at the threshold no longer just a whisper of evil, but a tangible horror extended an arm toward Tommy, its hand a grotesque parody of life, long fingers curling like roots eager to ensnare. "Mark, we have to get him," Emily gasped, her voice cracking under the weight of dread. The fear in her eyes was mirrored in his own as they reached desperately for Tommy. But the darkness twisted around them, a thick fog that stifled movement. "Stay close," Mark yelled, grabbing Emily's wrist. They pressed forward, pooling their strength, battling through the darkness that felt alive, pulsing with malicious intent. But with every step, the shadows grew more fervent, swirling and gripping, latching onto Mark's legs in a desperate embrace. "Pull him back! Pull him back!" Emily screamed. Tommy's cries echoed. The luminous necklace lay untouched, a distant glow that now felt mockingly weak, flickering against the shadows' encroaching greed. Mark could see his son struggling, feet slipping over the wooden floor, the black tendrils clawing at his shoes, pulling him down like quicksand. "Tommy, reach for me," Mark shouted, extending his arm, his voice strained with urgency. He could barely breathe through the panic clutching at his throat. But Tommy's wide eyes were fixed on the darkness, trapped by something that Mark couldn't see. A horrific realization surged within him. Whatever held Tommy was more than a collection of shadows. It had eyes, intentions, a hunger. "No." Mark lunged forward, but the moment felt infinite. Time stretched, and each second felt like a lifetime lost. With a sudden explosive surge, the darkness roared, and Mark was thrown back against the wall, pinning him down. He blinked, dazed, and saw Tommy disappear, swallowed whole by the void. Emily wailed, the sound mingling with the shadows, creating a cacophony that filled the air with despair. "No, I won't let you take him," Mark screamed, the sound fierce and raw. He pushed against the oppressive weight bearing down on him. Tear-filled eyes wandered desperately for the necklace, that small glimmer of hope. He would not lose his son, not like this. "Get it," Emily shouted, her own willpower electrifying the air around them. "Grab the necklace. It might drive them away." With renewed determination, Mark forced himself up, battling every ounce of darkness that coiled around him like a serpent. The room swirled, and for a split second, the shadows recoiled, sensing a shift in their hold. He staggered toward the glowing necklace as if it were a light at the end of a tunnel, every ounce of dread breathing life into his urgency. Reaching down, he clasped it in his hand. A surge of warmth shot through him, almost a heartbeat in his palm. "Tommy," he shouted, raising the necklace like a shield. "I'm coming for you." In that moment, the shadows shivered, recoiling with a fierce hiss. But a sudden rush of renewed laughter pulsed through the air as their whispers changed, morphing into their greatest fear. "You think you can face us?" The dark figure uncoiled, tightening its hold around the cabin. Mark's heart raced. "I'm not afraid," he shouted, trying to bind that courage inside him. But doubt crept in, twisting around his chest. The figures outside grew larger, staining the windows with their grotesque forms. Just then, an ear-splitting crack echoed through the cabin as an unseen force slammed against the wall next to him. "We will take what is ours." The shadows screamed, their voices mingling with the storm outside. Mark's grip tightened around the necklace, fear boiling into rage. He had to believe there was a way out, some glimmer of hope still between them. "Tommy," he screamed again, desperate for an answer, for a sign that his son was still there, alive in that encroaching darkness. What if this necklace was more than just a light? What if it held the key to something far worse? But before he could dwell long on that thought, the winds howled and the darkness surged toward him, twisting and howling, as if to remind him they were just beginning. What would he have to confront to save his son? As the shadows lunged for him once more, Mark knew the real battle was about to begin. The moment Mark lifted the necklace, a shockwave rippled through the cabin. Light spilled from it in blinding tendrils, illuminating the edges of the consuming dark. For a second, it pulled back, like a tide receding, revealing the huddled figure of Emily, her eyes wide in disbelief. They're afraid?" she stammered, glancing nervously around. Mark felt a frantic hope surge within him. "It's our chance, Em. We can still get to Tommy." He gripped the necklace tighter, feeling an electric pulse dancing in his hand. The shadows hesitated, swirling and writhing, their whispers turning into frantic howls. "You shouldn't have done that," they hissed. "You will regret it." The illusion of safety was brittle. Beneath the surface fury of light was the growing weight of dread, and Mark sensed the darkness planning its next move. He could feel squirming hands of shadow clawing at his feet, desperate to pull him down, dissuading his courage in this borrowed light. "Where are you, Tommy?" he yelled, his voice cut by the shrieks echoing behind him. "Tommy," Emily called, frantic and wild, her voice chasing the shadows. But there was only deafening silence in response. Marcus' hope began to feel like a fragile glass ball, barely holding together under pressure. Suddenly, an unnatural chill settled in the air. The shadows seemed to gather again, coalescing into a figure that loomed larger than before. Its eyes were glowing pits of darkness, a maddening void that drew Mark in, spilling countermelodies of laughter. Each chuckle sent ice through his veins. The figure smiled, revealing a mouth that stretched too wide, cracking open like an old door, rusted and dusty. "You cannot save him, Mark. He belongs to us now," it crooned, each word dripping with malice. A surge of rage overcame the fear. "No," Mark shouted, his breath hitching. "You will not take him." The necklace surged with an intensity that felt almost alive. He raised it high above his head, feeling the warmth radiate out like a blast of summer light scattering frigid winter shadows. "I won't let you have him," he cried again, every ounce of desperation channeling through him in a moment of panic. He lunged forward, the glowing necklace held like an unyielding sword. But the closer he got, the more violent the darkness lashed out. Gnarled hands erupted from the walls, wrapping around his wrists, pulling him down into a swath of blackness that sought to engulf him whole. "Join us, Mark," the figure called softly, its voice an enticing lullaby that mixed sanity with despair. "This is only the beginning." Mark fought against the pull, willpower surging through his entire being as he recalled Tommy's laughter, the way he'd run to him every time he came home, the brightness of his smile. All that innocence could not be lost to these horrors. "No!" he screamed, tearing himself free with a desperate twist. The glow of the necklace pulsed again, momentarily blinding the creature, pushing the shadows back as he pressed on through the chaos. Fear morphed into something primal. But just then, from the depths of the void, a piercing scream erupted. Tommy's voice, distorted and agonizing. "Dad, help me!" The sound was a knife slicing through Marcus' heart, sharpened by panic and pain. "Tommy!" Mark shouted, realizing the shadows aimed to confuse him, clawing at his mind, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. "Come, Tommy, come to me." Without thinking, he slid to the floor, holding the necklace out as a lifeline. "I'm here, son. I'll find you." The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of twisting voices screaming for silence. But Mark wouldn't let them take his boy. He steadied his breath, the light glowing ever brighter from the necklace, illuminating the corners of fear. What else would it require to reach Tommy? What unspeakable truths lay within the darkness he needed to uncover? A new rush of wind picked up, shaking the very walls of the cabin as he pressed on. Determined, but time was running out. Mark realized that to find Tommy, he would have to plunge deeper into the shadows than ever before. What horrors would he uncover in that unholy realm? A crack split the air, and the darkness began to pulse around Mark, thrumming like a heartbeat. Its rhythm was sinister, wrapping tightly around him, suffocating any hope of escape. He clenched the necklace, its glow piercing the void, almost like a beacon in an ocean of despair. But the shadows retaliated, expanding like a living thing. "Tommy!" he shouted again, desperate as cold fingers grazed his skin, reaching, grasping. Then he heard the clatter of something heavy, a sound that cut through the confusion. It was unmistakably Tommy's voice again, a soft whimper this time, almost drowned out by the whispers screaming for Mark to surrender. "Daddy!" The uncertainty in Tommy's voice shattered Mark's resolve, sending fresh waves of dread through him. It was becoming clear. These entities aimed to use Tommy against him. "Stay strong, son," he called, fighting to keep the quiver from his voice, but the shadows hissed back. "Give in. Let him join us." A monstrous hand shot out from the dark, knocking the necklace from his grip. He stumbled back, the light fading as he fell to the floor, the cold ground biting into his skin. Panic surged, but he was not done. With every ounce of strength, he scrambled towards the glowing pendant, feeling the darkness claw at him, tugging him backward. The cacophony of voices ebbed, replaced by a twisted symphony of mockery, as if the shadows were enjoying his struggle. "You will never reach him." Mark's heart raced. The creature still hovered, its eyes like dark flames, feasting upon his despair. "You think that trinket can save you?" taunted, stepping closer. "What treasure will you barter for his safety?" Suddenly, everything fell silent. Mark grasped the necklace, rising unsteadily. The air felt different, thick, suffocating, as if the shadows had drawn back to witness him. They were not just a legion of fear. They had been observing him, waiting. Mark's breath quickened as the realization struck him. The necklace was more than a shield. It was a key. It held a connection to the darkness, a power he hardly understood. He focused again, letting the light emanate from him, every heartbeat pushing against the void, every breath a challenge to reclaim his son. "I'll trade you my soul if it means saving him," he yelled, surprising even himself. Laughter erupted loud, booming, grotesque. "Oh, but my dear Mark, your soul is already ours. You just don't know it yet." And with that, the shadows surged like a tidal wave, crashing over him. The necklace flickered weakly, trying to hold its glow against the onslaught. Mark felt the icy breath of the darkness crawl over him, seeking to entwine within him, digging into his very core. "Tommy, hold on," he screamed, knowing he was losing both time and himself, but something deep within him flared up. In a moment of clarity, he thought back to his son's laughter, the warmth of his small hand wrapping around his finger, the way he would curl up on the couch, falling asleep to the sound of his favorite story. With renewed determination, Mark pushed past the fear, tapping into a reservoir of strength and love that flowed like a river. The shadows recoiled momentarily, wavering, but the darkness regrouped, melding into a monstrous form, creeping forward, snarling as it reached for him. The stakes were higher now, and if he couldn't find a path out, all would be lost. Facing the creature that had stolen his son's voice, Mark gripped the necklace tightly, setting his jaw against the chill. "I'm coming, Tommy," he shouted, and then his vision sharpened. A flicker of a figure behind the darkness, rising like dawn-piercing night. Was it his boy? The shadows hesitated, and the moment felt alive, crackling with energy, ushering in a decision. What would Mark dare to do next to save Tommy? He took a breath, heart pounding louder than the howling winds, preparing for the leap into chaos and truth. As the darkness pressed tighter, he raced towards that glimmer of light, knowing full well that he would either find Tommy or become trapped in a nightmare forever. What awaited him in that abyss? The moment Mark lunged into the darkness, everything shifted. It was as if he had pierced through a membrane, and the world transformed around him. No longer was he in the suffocating abyss, struggling against unseen hands. Now, he stood in a hazy space, shadows swirling around him like a storm. Yet there, in the distance, the silhouette of Tommy flickered. "Daddy!" The cry echoed, trembling with sweetness and fear. It was Tommy's voice, but strangely warped, tangled in the very air that vibrated with malice. Mark felt the urgency sharpen, the piercing glow of the necklace illuminating his path. But the haunting laughter returned, echoed by the tormented whispers of the shadows. "Did you think you could escape? Did you think you could leave this place unscathed?" The voices twisted around him, clamoring for his attention, pulling at his mind like the bitter wind of a winter storm. Mark forced himself to breathe, to concentrate. He moved toward the figure of his son, the light of the necklace pushing the shadows to the floor like a fleeing tide. "I'll find you, Tommy," he called, desperation stealing his resolve. Suddenly, the shadows thickened. A grotesque face emerged from the cloud, each detail monstrous and vivid, the open mouth wide enough to devour him whole, teeth like jagged stones glinting in the faint light. Mark's heart raced. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," the creature sneered, venom dripping from its voice. "You may find treasures beyond your reckoning, or perhaps destruction." "Let him go," Mark snarled, taking a step closer, defiance burning within. He pushed against the darkness that sought to wrap around him, focusing everything he felt into the necklace clasped tightly in his grasp. "Join us. Join the endless night," the darkness hissed, each word stinging like a whip. As if sensing his wavering, the shadows surged forward, hungry and desperate. Mark's breath quickened as he felt the weight of dread pressing on him. Fear seeped into his bones, but he refused to falter. With a sudden burst of adrenaline, he shouted, "You think fear will harness me? You will not win." In that instant, the figure of Tommy flickered again, closer, his small frame entwined in shadows that still caressed him, holding him like a suffocating embrace. "Daddy!" Tommy cried again, but this time, the sound carried a heaviness, a warning. The creature lunged. Mark threw his hands out, focusing every drop of light from the necklace not just against the darkness but into it, channeling the love for his son through every pulse of the energy. The necklace blazed, a beacon through the void, and for a moment, it illuminated a path of warm light. Then the weight of the shadows pressed in. The creature recoiled with a howl that shook Mark to his core, but the howls quickly transformed into a cacophony of laughter. "You really think love can save you? Love is weakness," it mocked, fury igniting its form like a flash of lightning. But the whispers danced around him, promising more than just despair. They beckoned him to join, to surrender himself for the sake of Tommy, to surrender everything and gain more. Mark hesitated, a flicker of doubt creeping in. What would he give for his son's safety? What was left to bargain? "I'll fight," he spat defiantly. "Fight?" The entity roared back. "You'll need more than courage to win this game." As the shadows roared back in fury, slashing at the air with claws of night, Mark seized the necklace, feeling its warmth flourished against the cold terror. Was this the answer? Did the necklace hold the power to reclaim his son and himself? He took a deep breath, eyes locked on Tommy's fading figure amidst the shadows. "I won't lose you, Tommy," he shouted, charging deeper into the darkness. What awaited him? Would love prevail, or would it cost him everything? With every step into the storm, a shocking revelation waited. Could a father's love truly face eternal darkness? It loomed larger, and Mark knew he had to act before it swallowed him whole. What unfathomable choice would he have to face next? Mark plunged deeper into the swirling shadows, the necklace radiating a pulsating warmth against the cold that engulfed him. Each flicker of its light revealed grotesque scenes hidden within the dark. Faces twisted in agony, reaching out as if they could claw their way into reality. "Daddy!" Tommy's voice echoed, now sharper, more frantic. With every call, it seemed to twist the very fabric of reality around him, pleading, begging. He could feel the weight of despair in his chest like an iron ball. The creature surged forward, its face a blend of malice and hunger. "You think you can save him?" The creature taunted, its distorted laughter ringing against the walls of darkness. "This is a realm where hope dies." Panic clawed at Mark as he sprinted through the abyss. The shadows brushed his skin like icy fingers, whispering promises of despair. "Join us. Leave the world behind." He shook his head, gritting his teeth. "I will not," Mark shouted, forcing the light from the necklace to surge forward in a desperate attempt to push back the encroaching darkness. But the shadows recoiled only slightly, then writhed, mocking him. "Foolish man. Love is mere folly in a realm of gloom." It lunged again, and with its claws outstretched, it nearly snagged a piece of Mark's jacket. He ducked, his breath quickening as a primal fear took hold. Glancing around, he noticed that Tommy's figure was still flickering, but it was slipping away, the shadows dragging him into their depth. He had to reach him. He had to do something. Suddenly, an idea sparked amidst the chaos. The words of the creature echoed in his mind, "You'll need more than courage. What if the necklace was more than just a beacon? What if it contained a primal force of its own? Taking a deep breath, Mark focused on the necklace, thinking of it not just as a light but as a bond forged through love and sacrifice. Use me, the voice of the necklace whispered, emerging clear from the chaos, filling him with conviction. No, 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 no. The creature's voice rose in alarm. You'll be lost to the shadows. Mark tightened his grip, feeling its warmth flood through him. He closed his eyes, envisioning a barrier of light forming around Tommy's flickering figure. As the shadows clawed at him, he focused, visualizing all his love, all his hope, and the bond that would lead him back what fueled his very being. The air thickened, electric. A force surged forth, brighter than the sun, showing the true essence of the necklace. Flames of golden light erupted, pushing away the darkness with ferocity. The creature screeched, a sound ripped from every nightmare Mark had ever endured, and the shadows shrank back, writhing in agony. "Daddy, help me!" Tommy cried, fear cutting through every bit of courage Mark held. The creature lunged again, but he stood firm, shielding the light around him. The necklace glimmered, a promise of protection. "You cannot take him, not today." But the darkness clawed at him with desperate fury. The abyss seemed to shift, reforming into twisted shapes that gnarled like jaws of the past, plotting his despair. Shapes of guilt, the shadows of decisions made. "What would you sacrifice, Mark? Do you have any idea?" "I'll do anything," he yelled, desperation fueling his voice. "Just take me instead." The laughter subsided, leaving an eerie stillness, almost contemplative. "Very well." The creature coiled around him, cold and relentless. Mark's heart hammered. What had he just offered? Suddenly, reality flickered. The air dense and heavy, the shadows thickening into a suffocating shroud. He realized too late he was crossing a line from which there may be no return. Indebted, the word echoed ominously, wrapped in the shadows' taunting calls. Mark felt a chill zip through his spine, awareness dawning on him as he sensed the dark pact forming. Had he just piled the weight of all his decisions onto his son's soul? He opened his eyes, horror crashing down on him. Tommy's figure vanished behind a curtain of shadows, and as the darkness began to reel him in, Mark braced for the worst. What was the price of his desperate act? All at once, the world spun, fracturing into a dizzying blur of shadow and light, and he was consumed. What awaited him beyond the darkness? Would he find Tommy in the void? Or would this be the end of everything? The darkness swallowed Mark whole. It was thick and heavy, wrapping around him like a shroud. For a moment, he was suspended in a void of nothingness, where sound and light dissipated into silence. But then, out of the depths of despair, a flicker of warmth surged forth from the necklace, igniting a fierce glow that fought back against the shadows that he gasped, struggling against the pull of the shadows that threatened to devour him. "Tommy!" he shouted, but his voice merely echoed back to him, swallowed by the infinite gloom. Panic clawed at him. Where was his son? Suddenly, he was torn from the void and thrust into a sinister scene. Twisted trees with gnarled branches leaned like hungry beggars wrapped in darkness. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. He stumbled forward, the glow of the necklace illuminating grotesque shapes moving just beyond his sight. "Join us," a melancholic whisper floated around him, sultry and inviting. The shadows morphing into the ghostly figures of children, their faces drawn in agony, mouths wide, begging for help. Their eyes, black pits, mirrored the terror in Mark's heart. "Tommy?" he cried out, desperation inching into his voice. "Where are you?" A chill swept through the air, and the ground beneath him trembled as the whispers morphed into anguished wails. "Leave us be. It's too late." Mark pressed forward, the light flickering in his hands, pushing the shadows away. It felt like wading through a thick fog, each step harder than the last. In his mind, the creature's words played like a broken record, laughing, taunting him. "You did this, he is ours now." No. He had to fight this. The love for his son fueled his resolve. It pierced through the darkness, lighting a path through the chaos. The shadows shrank back from the necklace's radiance, but they were far from defeated. They swirled around him, forming a relentless storm of despair and regret. Mark, a soft voice called out, breaking through the noise. It was sweet, innocent. Tommy. He turned, following the sound, heart pounding. Daddy. The vision of his son stood ahead, flickering like a flame in the tempest. Mark pushed forward, light bursting from the necklace as he drew nearer. But the shadows lashed out, dark tendrils snaking around his feet, pulling him back. Stop! Mark yelled, determination igniting within him. You will not take him. Taking a deep breath, the necklace blazed even brighter. He pictured Tommy, his laughter, the way his eyes sparkled with joy. With each thought, the light intensified, casting the shadows into retreat. Another lunge from the creature sent tendrils wrapping around Mark's arms, squeezing with a force that amplified his doubts. Will you save him at the expense of your own soul? He faltered, doubt creeping into his mind. The darkness brushed against his thoughts, pulling at memories he wished to forget. The feeling of failure washed over him, sharper than the icy tendrils. But I must, he whispered, forcing the words through a trembling throat. I have to save him. With one final surge, he reached for the light within him, letting it combine with the necklace's energy, creating a blinding burst that momentarily pushed the darkness away. Tommy, he shouted again, his voice thick with urgency. In that instant, he saw him, a shadowy figure, tangled in the dark, reaching out. Daddy! The plea cut through Mark's despair. But the darkness roared in fury, pulling violently to reclaim what it believed was its due. You're making a grave mistake. Then the shadows froze. Time suspended as Mark stood between the light and the chaos. In that moment, clarity stabbed through the fog. He could feel the weight of his choices, 1,000 moments flooding back, each decision pulling at his heart. Would he abandon his son for his own safety? Mark, help me. The call cracked through his resolve. Without thinking, he lunged toward Tommy. But suddenly, the ground shook violently. A rift opened beneath him, pulling them both towards an abyss darker than the deepest ocean. No! As he fell weightless and terrified, he realized the price of their bond, the gravity of the pact he had made. What horrors awaited them both on the other side of this darkness. As Mark and Tommy plunged into the chasm, the shadows laughed a sound that chilled him to the core. With their very souls hanging in the balance, could love conquer the depths of despair? Or was this the ultimate sacrifice they would pay? Mark and Tommy fell into the void. A sensation akin to being snatched by an unseen hand, an overwhelming rush of fear and desperation cocooned them in darkness. But amidst that shadowy abyss, a flicker of hope burned like a candle in a raging storm. Mark's thoughts raced as he plummeted. He had crossed into a realm of nightmares. But lost within that chaos, a determination ignited. He felt the necklace pulsing in his pocket, urging him to find his son, urging him to keep fighting. Tommy! He shouted, panic slicing through the silence like a knife. Daddy! Tommy's hopeful cry echoed, wrapped in the terror that bound them. Mark reached out, desperate to bridge the gap before them. The shadows twisted around him, their whispers a cold breeze at his back. They threatened to wrap around him tightly, to drown out every thought of light and love. Hold on. I'm coming. Mark shouted into the dark, and with each breath, the weight of despair pressed closer. He fought against it, the light from the necklace glowing fiercely. It was pushing through the blackness. In that moment, he wasn't just a father. He was a force of nature, summoned by love. Just as he began to lose hope, the necklace flared, illuminating his path through the inky depths. It's you and me against them, buddy, Mark shouted, the resolve in his voice stronger now. Suddenly, they landed softly on a patch of cold, hard ground. The darkness sagged, pooling around them like spilled ink. From the depths, a low growl filled the air, vibrating through the very bones of the earth. Shadows began to whip and swirl, the cries of countless lost souls rising. Stand behind me, Mark yelled. He could feel the energy coursing through the necklace, its warmth like a post-Christmas fire glowing in his hands. Now wasn't the time to falter. He raised the necklace high. With renewed strength, Mark stepped forward, confronting the swirling sea of shadows. You won, take him, he roared, unleashing the full might of the necklace's light. The darkness shrieked back, twisting as if in agony. A blinding beam erupted from the pendant, illuminating the nightmarish faces of the lost souls around them. Mark's heart raced as he pushed deeper into the shadows. Tommy, grab hold of me, he yelled, knowing they couldn't be apart again. Tommy appeared through the haze, reaching out. Daddy! His small figure flickered like a flame dancing in the wind. The relief surged through Mark like a jolt of electricity. I've got you. Hold on. He lunged, wrapping his arms around Tommy just as the shadows lunged back with frantic desperation. The light from the necklace erupted in intensity, wrapping around them like a protective cocoon. The air grew thick with dark whispers trying to pull them apart. You chose to fight, the creature hissed from the depths. This will cost you dearly. I don't care, Mark shouted back, clenching Tommy to his side. I'd sacrifice everything for my son. In that moment he felt a crack in the shadows. A portal opened, brief but shimmering with the light of the world outside. Now son. Into the light. Mark ran sprinting toward the gleaming escape. The shadows roared, an anguished cacophony as they clawed for them. But the overwhelming glow emanating from the necklace pushed the darkness back. They leaped into the portal together, tumbling through a bright expanse, and the shadows diminished behind them. As they landed, warmth enveloped them, restoring their skin with the touch of sunlight, the air fragrant with pine and life. Mark gasped, recovering as he clutched Tommy close, their breathing heavy yet relieved. The cabin stood before them, the Catskills at peace, untouched by the torment that had consumed them. Rushing to the door, Mark swung it open, leading Tommy inside. Everything felt different now, like a rusty old lock had found its key. Dad, we made it. Tommy beamed, the innocence shining in his eyes like sunlight breaking through clouds. Mark knelt, hugging him tight. Yes, we did. The weight of everything washed away, leaving him lighter than air. But as peace settled, Mark glanced back, the necklace dangling from his hand, a gentle reminder of the fight they had endured. Had they truly escaped, or had they simply stepped into a new light with shadows still lurking? He understood now love could conquer darkness, but it also demanded vigilance. Tommy, he said softly, cupping his son's face in his hands. Promise me you'll never forget. We can't take this for granted. Promise, Dad, the boy replied, eyes bright. Turning back toward the woods, Mark exhaled, knowing he'd always be ready to shield his son from whatever darkness dared to encroach again. For now they were safe, a family forged in love, resilient against the shadows. This was their home, their refuge, a paradise, but with a firm understanding that sometimes paradise has its shadows. But they would be ready forever. If you loved this conclusion and want more stories like this, you need to subscribe immediately before it's too late. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us keep bringing you exclusive, terrifying tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the Johnson family's fate. Don't wait even one more second to share this spine-chilling conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to see what just happened. Support this channel, become a true fan, and don't miss what comes next.